The Wantian's murderous house. On the weekend, I went to visit my grandmother with my mother as usual. And when I passed through the Dahongmen area, my mother suddenly pointed to a barrel-shaped yellow tower on the side of the road and said, "Have you seen that building? It's all affordable housing for the railway system. And an old colleague of mine used to live here." I looked at the tower, which looked a little dilapidated in the twilight, and casually responded, "Oh, how did you move away then?" My mother was shocked and said, "It's not moving away, it's dead. It's been more than 10 years since they died." My mother's old colleague's name is Chen Wantian, Wantian. And it's really enough to carry it. There were several waves of affordable housing on the railway. But he was either cut into the queue and paid for it, or he was shy enough to buy it, and he never got it by mistake. It was easy to wait for the batch of houses in Dahongmen. And Wantian handed over his 2 spacious and bright bungalows in ZZ. And finally got a 2-bedroom and 1 living building. My mom still remembers that when Wantian moved to a housewarming, she invited colleagues from the same department to come over and give him a warm pot. The layout of Wantian's house made my mother feel an indescribable awkwardness and crampedness. First of all, there is a serious lack of lighting. The whole house is dark, and there are 2 large chandeliers in the daytime. The second is Wantian's kitchen, which is wide at one end and narrow at the other, and looks like a coffin in shape. And the kitchen door is facing the bathroom. When I came out of dinner at Wantian's house that day, a master who was quite familiar with metaphysics shook his head and sighed. "This room in Wantian's house, TSK. It's too fierce. I'm afraid that he will not die well if he stays for a long time." The big guy was shocked when he heard this. And he just thought that the old man had drunk too much wine and was talking nonsense. 5 years after moving into her new home in Dahongmen, Wantian had a heart attack at home. When he felt palpitations and colic, he quickly called his family to call the 120 emergency number. Unfortunately, at that time, the road around Dahongmen had not been widened. And Wantian caught up with the evening rush hour when he became ill. And his family's house was adjacent to the Barong wholesale market. And there was a crowded and narrow old community. So the ambulance first blocked enough with the second ring road. And it was easy to approach the railway community. And you could see the yellow towers of the round wheel. But the road in the community was too narrow. And the 2 sides were full of illegally parked vehicles. And the ambulance was stuck at the entrance of the community for a long time, and it just couldn't drive in. In the end, Wantian was all left with no air intake. And his son saw the ambulance from the window, picked up his father and ran downstairs. But just out of the door of the building, Wantian's son felt that the father on his back suddenly became very heavy. And the daughter-in-law stepped forward to see that it was ruined. Wantian peed on his pants, but the person had already swallowed his breath. Wantian was suffocated to death while watching the ambulance that couldn't drive in. After Wantian was gone, Shunyi's daughter-in-law's family was demolished and divided into a big house. And the younger couple took Wantian's wife to live together in a new house, so as not to let the old lady stay alone in this sad place. Seeing things and thinking about people. Thinking that the house in Dahongmen was empty. They entrusted an intermediary to rent it out. Who knew that after less than a month, the tenants were always clamoring to quit the rent. And several tenants changed before and after. And the reason was all the same: this house is haunted. According to the tenants, they can always be woken up by a heavy and muffled sigh every night, which can be heard by several members of the family. But when they turn on the light and look for it again, everything is as usual, and there is no life. Night after night, you can always hear a man's sigh. Wantian's daughter-in-law said that this is the old wife is unwilling, so she will sigh helplessly in the middle of the night. Since this is the case, the house is also rented out, The right is to give the old man midnight to return to the soul. Leave a place to rest and settle the thoughts. Therefore, Wantian's house is still empty. No longer rented out, and the family does not dare to live in it. Passing by today, I talked about the old people and old things. And my mother sincerely felt that the ironclad master was simply a god. I think that the 5 elements of Feng Shui handed down by our ancestors for thousands of years are true. And they contain a long and profound scientific mechanism. It is true that we should not be biased in our lives. But if we are fortunate enough to meet a high-ranking person to issue an early warning, we should still pay proper attention to it and carefully try to dispel it. After all, life is precious, and if you are as timid as me, you would rather believe in crises and dangers that you can't see or touch.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and put notification on to watch more videos. If you have similar experience, please comment and let me know your experience.